Sup, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Side Hustler Society. This your host Elijah, who's the king of side hustles. In this video or episode, rather, I have the YouTube lingo just kind of wandering in my head. For those of y'all that don't know, I have multiple YouTube channels, so I always say in this video. But in this episode of the Side Hustler Society podcast, we're going to be talking about what is the best business entity or structure for a business for a tradesman or tradeswoman. So this is someone who's a video editor, who's a lawyer, who's a plumber, electrician, someone who has a particular trade or service, and obviously they want to enter the business marketplace with that service. What's the best entity that they should enter the marketplace in, whether it be sole proprietor, LLC, S corp. We're going to be discussing that, as well as the process of going from part-time to full-time, and how do you deal with certain things such as outsourcing if you do decide to do whatever you're doing at scale. Joining me in today's episode will be Charles J. Reed from GetPayroll. Charles is a certified public accountant, U.S. tax court practitioner, a Vietnam veteran, and the founder of GetPayroll. Charles's companies have provided full-service payroll services, payroll tax services, and other payroll-related services since 1991. Charles is the company's senior executive and entrepreneur with more than 50 years of financial leadership experience in a broad range of industries and the author of 4 books. His latest book, The Payroll Book, A Guide for Small Businesses and Startups, is currently 25 in Small Business Books section on Amazon. And we're actually going to be talking about his book on the podcast. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into today's episode.
Welcome to the Side Hustler Society podcast with your host, Elijah Bilel. This is where you can find out more about hustles that are best for you. And of course, make more money in the process. Elijah has been in the gig economy and freelance space for over 5 years and has done over 3,000 deliveries on Uber Eats. He's an Airbnb superhost, runs multiple YouTube channels, and is the author of the best-selling book, The Anatomy of Financial Success. It's his mission to empower people with the tools needed to be successful. Now, welcome your host, the king of side hustles, Elijah Bilel.
Okay, we are live. How you doing today, Charles?
Doing well, Elijah. Doing well. And you?
I can't complain. Been doing pretty good. I'm glad that the weather has actually been pretty smooth, pretty nice lately, which is a nice change from it being extremely hot or extremely cold. We've experienced the hot portion of that in Texas for a while. We had a drought for a few months, but thank God it's ended.
It was a good rainstorm last weekend, and we're looking for more on Friday. So, yeah.
It might be a personal preference, but if it could rain at nighttime, like when most people are asleep, we can get the benefits of it just sprinkling down, but not have to deal with it during the day. That's a personal preference, not to say it will happen, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we could be in Camelot where it never rains till after sundown, but, we're a long way from Camelot, I'm afraid.
Right. So I want to say I definitely appreciate you coming on to the Side Hustler Society podcast. As you probably know, there's a lot of people in America, or just in general, that are picking up side hustles, and they pick up some kind of trade or skill, whether it be a video editor, plumber, electrician, graphic designer, and they really want to structure a business around that trade or skill. But eventually they want to go from part-time to full-time, maybe eventually leave their 9 to 5 and make a full-time career out of this. But there is some mysterious or mystique to how exactly they do that. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about a lot of questions that my audience has as far as making that transition.
Sure. I did it myself some 30 years ago. So, yeah, I understand.
Yeah. So just starting right off the bat, some of our listeners might be curious, how'd you get involved in a business yourself?
Well, after military, and my military experience wasn't valued in business world then, like today. They really don't understand what military experience brings to the table. I went to college, got my degrees, got my BBA, my MBA, sat for and passed my CPA exam while I was still in graduate school. Went to work for Texas Instruments.
Oh,
Spent 50 years in the corporate world, large corporations, small corporations, startups, turnarounds, lots of great experience. Got tired of the corporate world, realized I was never going to run a corporation. I didn't have the political skills. I was unwilling to stab people in the back and toss them off the ladder. So if I was going to have a business to run, and I grew up in a family business, but I couldn't work with my father, I was going to have to start my own. So just over 31 years ago, Ruth, my wife, and I started our own business. It was a accounting firm. I hung out my shingle as such, had a payroll sideline. Over the years, we grew it. I sold off the accounting practice here about 10 years ago and just kept the payroll company and have been growing that ever since.
Nice. I can really relate to, like, you kind of saw where you were in corporate America. You weren't really willing to play the politics per se, and
No.
just treat people as disposable. A lot of times it comes down to that. So you decided to create your own path, forge your own path. I can really respect that. I used to be a PA at Amazon, and my area manager, I would joke with him that, why do you even bother going home? Like, you might as well buy a mattress and put it in that corner. Because, like, when I get there, you're there. And when I leave, you're still there. And I had to come in 30 minutes early and stay 30 minutes late to run the shift. And he laughed saying that when I said that. But it was kind of pretty eye-opening. Like, I always felt like if you're going to put in that much work, it's good to build some kind of a business asset, something that you have full control over, something you can pass on to your next generation of kids if you wanted to. But you might end up doing the same work but not get any of that. I mean, you'll get money, but you can get money doing it yourself too.
Well, and you probably are not going to get wealthy working for somebody else. I mean, there's a few very top people, but most of the wealth comes from being in business for yourself. That's where you can build wealth. We built the building here about 20 years ago. It's paid for. Okay. The business generating a very nice living for me and for my staff. Now my kids aren't interested, so the business is going to the staff when I die, because they helped build it and they should benefit from it. So they're actually owners, which I like, because it makes them a little more interested in the operation if they've got, a financial stake in it, and they do, and I like that. So it's important to me, and I think entrepreneurship is wonderful. I think a gig and a side hustle that you can build into something permanent or several of them is great. Now you may have to work your tail off the first period of time. The first 10 years was a lot of work for me. I don't work as hard as I used to. I don't have to. And it's not for everybody. Don't get me wrong. Some people want that 8 to 5 job, 40 hours a week, 2 weeks vacation, and some sort of retirement maybe in 40 years, and that's great. But for those of us who have that entrepreneurial spirit, there's nothing like your own business. And if the first one doesn't succeed, the second, third, or fourth one may. So just keep after it. It's very rewarding. I'm very happy with what I do. I love what I do. And I don't have to put up with anybody else's whims. I mean, I had a boss once who, I swear I'm going to write the book, Park Your Ego at the Door. I had a boss who would take us all outside, point out the name on the building was his. Actually, it was his father's. He inherited the business. And if we didn't like that, we didn't need to come back in. That was real motivating.
Wow. If you
he went bankrupt, then I can tell you why too. So
yeah, I mean, good grief. If you ever do write that book, please let me know. I'll be the first one to buy it.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, when you do work for someone else, they do determine the work culture. And some are good, some are not so good. But if you don't want that to be a factor, that's a bonus to building your own. You can determine what the work
Yep,
culture is.
you do. And if you're smart about it, you hire great people that do wonderful work. And basically, you can then, over time, delegate the responsibility and the authority of the people that work for you and allow you to do and create things that you couldn't do on your own. Uh, it's great to start out by yourself, but it's great to build an organization with people and allow you to achieve more than you could achieve by yourself. I mean, I couldn't do the work that's done here. I've got a dozen people, and there's no way I could do it all by myself. I, I'd be out of business in a day if it lasted that long. So,
Right.
hiring great people. Uh, I like um, Warren Buffett's attitude about hiring. We hire nice people. We don't hire jerks. And, it makes for a much more pleasant working environment. We just don't hire people like that. We don't hire huge egos. We don't hire prima donnas. Everybody here gets a say on a new hire. So it's a good culture. We enjoy it. It makes life pleasant. And a lot of corporations I worked in weren't pleasant to work in because they had a lousy culture, which comes from the top. So you get to set your own culture. And if you set a good one, you'll enjoy it. If you don't, you won't.
Nicely put. And you brought up a good point on like nowadays, like you couldn't do everything by yourself. You do hire people, and that's actually something we'll get into later in the podcast. But some people, in given your area of expertise, a lot of people will probably be curious about this. For the average tradesman or tradeswoman, who they have their video editor, plumber, they have some kind of trade, and they offer services. They may be wondering what's the best business structure they should start with. By default they'll be a sole proprietor if they just get out there and start doing it. But is it best to stay like that? Should they start an LLC or some other entity? What's your opinion on that?
In my opinion, in most circumstances, the best entity is a S corporation. You form a corporation in your state, then you file your S corp election with the IRS. It's taxed as a pass-through entity. Uh, the laws are very solid, and all the case law is huge on corporations. So you're fairly fixed, and you have a box that you work in. LLCs are okay; they're not quite as fixed. They also tend to be a little more expensive to form. Lawyers charge more for an LLC. You can get a book, How to Form a Corporation in Your State. They're available online. I think they're about $29.95 now. And it'll give you all the information you need, all the forms you need, everything there. Read the book, fill out the forms, send them in with the fee to the state and your corporation. Then the 2553 is a simple form that you file with the IRS, and boom, you're an S Corp. And that is a very tax advantaged entity, more so than a partnership or a sole proprietor. Now, an LLC can also file as a S corp and be treated as an S corp for federal tax purposes. It may or may not be at the state level, but for federal taxes, it can file an S corp election and be treated that way. So there are a lot of advantages to the corporate structure. There's some disadvantages, but the biggest thing, of course, with the LLC or the corporation is the liability issue. You are no longer personally liable. Your personal assets, your house, your bank accounts, your car are not subject to being seized if you lose a court case because somebody sues you for trip and fall, if nothing else, whatever. They sue you for and they win. And juries are notoriously unpredictable. So you never want to go to court if you can avoid it. But the liability protection of a corporation is huge, or an LLC. You don't get that in a sole proprietorship or a partnership. You're personally liable for everything. So once you get going, I recommend that from just a tax point of view, plus the liability protection. So, yeah.
Okay. And when you say get going, do you mean like when you've kind of consciously decided that, hey, this is going to be my career, I'm going to take this serious in terms of making money?
Once you have money rolling in, because it does cost a little bit, and it will cost you a little bit every year to be a corporation. You'll have to file a corporate tax return, and there may be corporate taxes in your state. But you can start out as a sole proprietor, test the water. If it's working, great. Now, if you're in something that has a high liability exposure, start as a corporation. Don't put your everything you own at risk uh, if you're in a high liability situation. But any situation can create liability. You could be driving down the street on company business, run over the doctor, whose wife then sues you for his lost income for the next 40 years, and you got nothing left. So, anybody can sue you at any time for anything, and a corporate structure protects your personal assets.
Yeah, there's no price on peace of mind. I think that's probably the best quote that I could say there.
Yep.
And I really like how you said that giving something a try, I guess theoretically for a few months and get money coming in if you decided that, hey, I want to get serious about this and go ahead and move forward with the corporate structure. Except for there's certain businesses where there's more liability than others. If you are going to get involved in one of those, maybe the testing period should be considerably shorter. Instead of a few months, maybe a few weeks, but definitely have incorporating in the game plan in the very near future. Like, because some people might do it years down the line, and there could be a consequence to doing that.
There can be. Now, if you're going to go into the asbestos removal business, I'd incorporate before I do any business whatsoever, okay? Because liability is huge. But, if you're going to be a graphic designer, your liability is relatively low. However, I've seen designers get sued because they've screwed up something and the advertising's wrong, and they sue them for, well, you had me advertised with this graphic and it's wrong, and I spent all this money, it's wasted, so pay me back. And it gets crazy. So there's liability in everything these days. This country is sue happy. There's too many lawyers.
There's too many lawyers. I like that. It's very true. Too many hungry lawyers.
And yeah. And look, I've got a bunch of them as clients because we do a lot of very small businesses and solopreneurs and so on. Because once you're incorporated, you're an employee and you have to pay yourself through the corporation and file taxes and 941s and W-2s and all that stuff. And we've got a large number of clients that are just single people, but we take care of their payroll for them. So, lawyers have their place. So I'm not going to piss off all my clients that are lawyers because there's too many of them. They'll tell you there's too many because it's hard to get business because there's so much competition out there.
Yeah, this isn't dunking on any lawyers. They provide necessary services to society. And
Absolutely.
one of Robert Kiyosaki's books, I believe it's Increase Your Financial IQ. He talks about there's 5 different types of there are 5 areas that make up financial IQ. First one is making more money. The second one is protecting your money. A lot of people just don't consider the second one. And what we're talking about is a vital foundational step to protecting your money.
Yes, absolutely. Making it's one thing, having it later is another. We see that all the time in some very high paid professional athletes and actors that then are making millions or tens of millions of dollars a year, and a few years later they're flat broke because they don't take care of their money. They don't plan for it. They don't save. They don't invest. They get taken advantage of. They buy into, they start restaurants, which are just a great place to throw money at and never get it back and other silly things. But, know, uh, it happens. And if you're not careful with it, yeah, you may make it, but you'll end up broke if you're not careful. And then lawsuits can, steal millions or everything. So,
Right. And that's a good lead in into this next question. Now, I don't know if what we just covered is the answer to this question, but like in your opinion, like what is the biggest mistake that you see entrepreneurs, the tradesmen and women that we're talking about here, make when they go from part time to full time?
well, they either don't set up the proper entity, which is a mistake, or then they don't follow the rules within that entity. Okay, they're smart. They incorporate. They fill out the paperwork. They send it to the state with the check, and now they're a corporation. Well, now you're subject to a lot of rules, and you have to follow them to make sure your corporation stays in effect. Your invoicing has to say Inc. Your checks need to be in the corporate name. You need to file your taxes. Then one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs make a mistake on is they hire their first worker. And they hire them as an independent contractor. Pay them cash. Okay. Guys,
Oh,
you're incorporated and you pay that person cash. That's called tax fraud. Okay. It's a felony and it can actually land you in jail for, 5 to 10 years. Probably won't if you just do it once or twice, but it could. So be smart about that. Classify your workers properly. If they're employees, treat them as employees. If they're truly independent contractors, treat them that way and know the difference. Uh, we'll talk about my book later, but it goes into all that detail. And there's other sources for that information. A good CPA that understands small business can help keep you safe. And, you need a lawyer, you need an accountant, you need a banker, you need an insurance agent. You need those four people in your life as a businessman. It's just back to life. You can't do it all yourself. You got to have expert advice. But one thing about those advisors, don't let them tell you how to run your business. Use them for their expertise. Don't, and some of them will want to tell you how to run your business. They don't know your business. You do.
so you want to have them on your team, but at the end of the day, the decisions are definitely up to you to make. Take what your advisors say into consideration, but don't let them run your business because they only know the portion of the business that they're helping you with. They don't know the whole picture. You're the one who knows the whole picture.
Exactly. Very well put, sir.
Okay. There's this huge debate nowadays over companies treating employees and independent contractors differently. The biggest example I can think of is the gig economy with Uber and Lyft and DoorDash and all that. You definitely don't want to get caught up in all that. So, whatever classification you decide to classify people as and hire them as, just make sure you know the laws and the conditions of what you're doing, so you don't get mixed up in all that. Because I don't see that fight going too well over the next few years. A lot of companies are really trying to skate these lines between independent contractors and employees. I'm actually thinking maybe eventually another category might be made altogether called dependent contractors. I don't know. But who wants to get involved in all that? Just, yeah.
There's a new proposal from the Biden administration on classifying independent contractors. I have it on my desk. It's from the Federal Register. It's 57 pages long in very fine print. And it changes some of the aspects, and it's out for comment at the moment, and I'll be commenting on it, as will some of my staff, back to the government, to the Department of Labor. But it changes. If it goes through, it's going to change things fairly substantially because, some administrations are much more interested in making sure that everybody's an employee, providing union representation, and other things. Other administrations are more laissez-faire and perfectly willing to let people do their own thing. So it changes from administration to administration, and the current administration tends to be a little more pro-union, wants more employees and less independent contractors, and that's the way the law is directing at the moment. In 2 years, it may start changing because previous administration had put in a rule about independent contractors. It was supposed to go into effect March 8th last year, and on March 6th, the new administration canceled it. So the law changes, and you got to be up to speed on it, because whatever it is today, you may get blindsided tomorrow.
Nicely put. Okay. So, speaking of, well, not just contracting, but just business in general, we talked about, obviously you can't do everything yourself, but it does start with you in most cases. When someone decides to expand and to scale a business, which will likely require like outsourcing, do you have any advice on how they go about hiring quality people, or even like some of the people that you mentioned having on your team? What's a good way to find quality people that can be that?
There are a number of books on hiring people, and I've read a number of them over the years. Uh, but a lot of it is skill that you learn. I was very lucky. My wife was a real people person, and she made the decisions on who we might hire, and was very, very good at it. I only overruled her once. 3 weeks later, I had to fire the person. So
Oh,
I don't take a lot of credit. She was my secret weapon. Excuse me, and allowed me to hire the right people. So you got to look at them. You got to be careful. You got to talk to them. If you have already hired people, let them interview them as well. Make sure it's a good fit. Make sure they meet your corporate culture, because culture is very important. If they don't fit in the culture, they're going to create discord, and discord never is good. So you got to be real careful. Don't hire jerks. Don't hire prima donnas. Hire smart people. Hire good people, but hire people who will also be happy with the job you're hiring them for. Not plan on being CEO in 3 weeks. Okay, so they have to have the right expectations and the right skill set and the right intelligence, and you've got to know what they need to have to fill that job, and then find nice people who do the job.
okay. And you had mentioned that you've read a few books that are pretty great on the subject. Could you maybe give us one of them that I could refer to the
Well, I'm
audience?
I'm going to give you what I think is the absolute best book for nascent business people, people who are starting a business, people who have a small business. I buy it by the dozen and give it to clients, and it's required reading for every new employee. And that's The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, because it teaches you how to work on your business, not in your business. A lot of us entrepreneurs, we start out, we know what we're doing. I was a CPA, I was a tax expert. You know, I know how to do the work, but I didn't know how to work on my business. And I got very frustrated, and I was in 5, 6 years into it. And I considered firing everybody and just taking it back into the game room and being a sole entrepreneur. And a friend of mine gave me a copy of Michael's book, and it changed my business life. It taught me how to work on my business, not in my business. And that is key to growing in success, is working on your business. It taught me how to set up checklists, procedures, policies. I can hire somebody in to do payrolls, and I can give them the procedure manual, and they can know nothing about payroll, and they can do a payroll correctly. Now, it may take them 20 times as long or 50 times as long as it will in a month, but they could do it with no instruction whatsoever if they follow the procedures. Okay. And so every time, and that procedure is not down because I learned from Michael, it's a living thing. And as things happen, as new changes happen, as mistakes happen, you learn from it, you adapt the procedure, and you put policies in place so it doesn't happen again. And I remember when Six Sigma was the big thing, and error rates were supposed to be, minuscule, and ours weren't. And after Michael and reading the book and implementing their procedures over the course of a few months, our error rate went just almost to nothing. It was incredible, the changes. So, I believe in what Michael teaches in that book, and I think every business person should read it.
Okay.
You're welcome, Michael.
Yeah, some free promotion, but it sounds like it's definitely worth it. So we'll be sure to leave a link to that book in the show notes.
Yeah.
But speaking of book, I know in 2020 you recently came out with a new book of your own. So why don't you tell us about it?
The Payroll Book, a guide for small businesses and startups. It's 30 years of wisdom distilled down to 95,000 words. It goes through everything about payroll. It's not exhaustive, but it'll solve most all of the things you're going to come across. It's a reference book. It's a great cure for insomnia, of course. Put it on your nightstand. If you can't sleep, pick it up. You'll go to sleep pretty quick. But there's a lot of horror stories in there and some fun things. And it really teaches about payroll, how to do it, entities. That's the first chapter is entity selection and how it affects payroll. What's an employee? What's an independent contractor? Taxes, tax penalties, how to get penalties abated, how to run a payroll, and then things like escheat and PEOs and record keeping and handbooks and other things. And so it's a great reference book. And Elijah, for your audience, if they would like a copy of it, if they will go to thepayrollbook.com, enter the discount code podcast, we will ship them a copy of the book for free, no charge whatsoever, as long as supplies last for your listeners.
Well, we very much appreciate it. And when it comes to payroll and just the topics we're talking about here, I always say you can never have too much information. So everyone, you definitely want to take advantage of that. As y'all heard him talk about earlier in the podcast, he already dropped some gems that are in the book. So you want to get the full story. We'll be sure to leave a link and those instructions in the show notes so you can be sure to take advantage of that. So Charles, with that being said, I guess we'll go ahead and start wrapping up the interview. But I always ask my guests if they have any questions they want to hit me with, whether it be on the topic or just in general. You have any questions you want to ask me?
No, I'm good. I like what you do. I like the fact that you're helping nascent entrepreneurs get going and succeeding. I think that's just wonderful.
Yeah, it's part of the mission statement. And so many people, there's not enough resources about just entrepreneurship in general. It's really not. And the school system, for the most part, teaches people to be employees. So it is what it is. I feel like there needs to be more of a balanced equation as far as resources available for people who want to be entrepreneurs, who want to be in business for themselves, whatever type of business that may be, whether it be a smaller form of business or whether it be you want to employ a lot of people and make a huge difference. There needs to be more resources out for entrepreneurship. So that's the origin of this podcast. I'm just doing my part to get the word out, get the information and resources available.
Absolutely. That's wonderful work.
Okay, Charles. So for people that want to get more of you or want to check out GetPayroll, where should they go? Should they go to your website, social media?
They can find us everywhere. We're obviously getpayroll.com. We're there. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok even now. My marketing staff is younger. and that's part of the reason I hired them is they understand. Yeah, they handle the whole social media thing because, my attitude is Facebook's for sending baby pictures to grandma, but I'm an Old school.
Well, I actually don't think that's such a bad thing. As far as I think everyone should outsource their social media at some point, if you ask me, because it can be very time consuming. And
Yes.
at some point, as a business owner, your time will definitely be better off doing something else, like getting more clients or just focusing on income producing activities. Uh, as soon as you can outsource the social media, because it is necessary nowadays, I would definitely do it. It'd probably be one of the first things I outsource. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah. First rule of time management is only do what only you can do. So those things that you can outsource and you can delegate, do so as quickly as you can afford to do so, and concentrate on those things that only you can do. My job as CEO now is basically to make my employees' life easy, make them more efficient. That makes them happier and it makes me more money. So yeah,
Who's gonna argue with that, right?
right, exactly.
Okay. So, with that being said, we'll go ahead and start wrapping up this episode of the Side Hustler Society podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can give us a thumbs up. It's very much appreciated. It helps us with the YouTube algorithm. And if you're listening to us on Apple, if you can leave a review for the podcast, it greatly helps us out. With that being said, this has been Elijah Bilel. Be sure y'all check out Charles at his website. And also, we're going to leave a link to his offer for the book in the show notes. Be safe, be proper, everyone, and get out there and make a difference.
This episode may be over, but your hustling journey has just started. Visit thesidehustlesociety.com to access all links and resources mentioned in the show that will help you on your hustler's journey.